Please stop. Don't come in, I said, trying to block her, but she retorted, ever heard of living within your means? It's a waste for just two of you to live here. We'll be moving in from today. If you don't want to live with us, then you're the one who should leave. Oh, but you'll still be paying. We're going through a tough time right now. Families need to help each other out, right? My mother-in-law, patting my shoulder, I gave nothing but a disdainful look. I'm Sally, 28 years old. I've always loved studying and learning new things. I managed to get into a well-known prep school in my hometown, and I was living a happy life until a snowy day in my last year of high school when a car slip on the snow took both of my parents away from me. Handling my parents' funeral and dealing with things I didn't understand, the insurance money was barely left after all the procedures were done on my behalf. With no relatives, I was suggested to go into a facility, but learning I could only stay there for about 3 years, I looked for a place where I could work and live in. The options were limited for someone who only finished high school. Still, I was hired to work at one of the few inns that offered room and board. First, I was strictly taught the basics, like how to serve customers. The seniors and the landlady were strict yet kind to me, who knew nothing. The owner's daughter also grew fond of me, and we spent time like a family. By the time 10 years had passed, I had become quite good at my job, and I had saved a considerable amount of money. I have a dream. To make it come true, I've worked hard. I received praise from the landlady for my tea-making skills and was entrusted with the task of making tea at the inn's annual tea enjoyment gathering. The region where our inn is located is famous for its Amirian-grown tea, so this event was held as part of community contribution efforts, involving nearby tea farms and specialty tea shops. I met my future husband, Kent, at this event, specifically at the segment where the inn decides on its tea suppliers. I made tea for a nervous Kent, marking our first encounter. Kent, the heir to a long-established tea plantation, was participating in this event for the first time that day. I was drawn to his gentle demeanor and soft-spoken nature, and after dating for a year, we decided to get married. However, getting married was not straightforward. I was prepared for the possibility of straightforward opposition. Given my background, I thought it might be inevitable to face resistance from a traditional tea family. I could at least figure that out. Yet, the reality was far more malicious than I had imagined. You look exactly like someone who didn't finish high school. Opening the door and locking eyes with her, the first words my sister-in-law spat out. I was so startled that I dropped my bag, causing my neatly aligned shoes to scatter slightly. Hey! What are you saying, sis? Kent retorted, but this was just the beginning. So, you're a high school dropout with no parents. She said, her tone devoid of any compassion or consolation, just cold and mocking. Our family might not boast, but everyone has graduated from respectable universities, you know? I'm not keen on introducing high school dropout blood into our family. I couldn't believe I was being spoken to this way. I looked at Kent, but he didn't seem ready to speak up. You probably don't even know the proper way to do things like cooking or laundry without parents, right? I wonder our family might be too much for a high school dropout like you. I could hear a sneering laugh from my sister-in-law sitting on the sofa behind me. After a series of insults, when the room finally quieted down, Kent spoke up before I could retort. Please, Dad, Mom, stop it. Sure, she's a high school dropout and not incredibly beautiful because she's older, but she knows about American-grown tea from working as an inn waitress, and although she's not the best cook, she can manage household chores well enough. I've already explained where she works, haven't I? The inn's owner likes her a lot, and Sally is essential for our future business. I've explained this, haven't I? Saying this, he grasped my hand, mouthing it's okay to reassure me. At that moment, I felt a sense of discomfort. It almost sounded as if Kent was marrying me because I was favored by the inn's owner. After enduring such heartless insults from my in-laws, perhaps I was numb to the point where I fell into the illusion that Kent was rescuing me, that together we could make it work. I wanted our marriage to be formally recognized, but Kent suggested that if the inn's owner, who was like a parent to me, called his family, that would suffice. So, I asked the owner to call Kent's home on our behalf. It seemed his parents were easily swayed by influential figures. Right after the owner made the call, we received permission to marry. I remember being surprised by their quick change of heart. At this time, my best friend Amy expressed her concern about whether it was truly okay for me to get married. "I know how hard you've worked all these years. I think of you as a sister, and I just want you to be happy." Amy, who had always been close to me, was the same age as Kent. The image of Kent I spoke about and the Kent Amy knew didn't seem to match, and she was always worried I might be getting deceived. For a while after getting married, Kent and I lived harmoniously. He would say the food I made was delicious, and we thanked each other, sharing warm moments together. I thought Amy's worries were unfounded. While continuing my work at the inn, I occasionally helped out at the family's tea shop, living a content life. Then, my mother-in-law fell down the stairs and fractured a bone. Given our initial greeting and subsequent interactions, I had kept my distance from my in-laws as much as possible. Considering my sister-in-law was also living with them, I didn't take the situation too seriously. However, Kent said something unbelievable. "Mom fractured her bone, right? This is a good opportunity, so we've decided to move in with them." This was abruptly brought up by Kent one day after he returned from work. We had never discussed such a thing before. I'm troubled by this sudden decision. We have to consider our lease renewal, and I have my job, plus your sister lives there. I can help out by visiting, but... As I was proposing alternatives with a confused mind, suddenly a loud noise made me tense up. It was the sound of Kent slamming the table. "What? I'm the eldest son, you know? Are you planning to leave everything to others and do nothing?" Facing a Kent who seemed like a completely different person from the gentle and calm one I knew, I was totally stunned. "But that's not. It's not different, is it? I took in an orphan like you, and we got married despite opposition, so shouldn't you at least try to be useful, work a bit? I'm not just trying to please them, but maybe your high school dropout brain doesn't get it, huh?" Faced with Kent's uncharacteristic demeanor, I was speechless. He seemed almost thuggish. I must have been trembling. Then, Kent hugged me gently, as he usually would. Under normal circumstances, this would have been a moment of happiness, but at that time, all I felt was fear. "I'm sorry for being harsh, okay? Sally, you're a bit silly, so I got irritated. It's your fault, you know? But if you listen to what I say, everything will be okay. You must be feeling anxious, so let's just do this until Mom gets better," he said, as if he was making a concession, trying to reach out to me gently. Little by little, I began to be consumed by his words. And so, I went to help out, at least to some extent. I thought that being in a position to be thanked might improve our relationship. By the end of the month, I had managed to finish packing and administrative tasks while working, and we moved. On the day we moved into my in-laws' house, the words spoken to me by my mother-in-law in her room were enough to break my spirit. "Don't think that just because you came to help, you'll be thanked and your status will change. You're the high school dropout bride who brings shame to our family, the lowest in this household. Naturally, you'll be the last to use the bath." I was frozen in place, unable to move. Sweat chilled my back, and breathing became a struggle. This breathing grew more difficult with each day spent at my in-laws' house. While I could breathe normally at work, at home, I struggled to breathe properly, feeling suffocated. Eventually, I couldn't even manage a proper smile, and my mistakes at work increased. Amy was worried about me, but because I had insisted on getting married despite her concerns, I felt too guilty to admit anything was wrong, only managing to say I was fine. However, the stress led to sleepless nights and a worsening of my health. Not wanting to be a burden, I quit my job, citing the need to care for my mother-in-law as the reason. I should have properly said goodbye, but by that time, I lacked the energy even to leave the house. And so began my days of enduring insults while managing household chores. "How many times do I need to tell you? The food is too salty. Do you want to make us sick? You can't even cook a decent meal no matter how much time passes. I thought it was tasty because I got used to it. If it had continued like that, would I have been killed? Sally, you're lucky to learn cooking from Mom. The cleaning is always lacking somewhere. What was the point of marrying an olden waitress if it meant nothing? Kent's verbal abuse gradually worsened, and now, the gentle words he once offered seemed like a lie. What was supposed to be a temporary living arrangement showed no signs of ending. Today, as always, my mother-in-law cheerfully left for her hula dance hobby. Kent began to describe me as a frugal old lady who became even more sinister and gloomy, making the house suffocating to be in, and he started going out drinking, not returning home. One day, saying, "I won't be coming home tonight," he left the house dressed more beautifully than usual, with flashy makeup. My sister-in-law is about to turn 31. Lately, she's been active in her search for a marriage partner, often making snide remarks that I only got married because her brother lost his mind, or that it was good to have a free housekeeper, but recently she's been in a better mood, perhaps because she met someone nice, and the insults from her have lessened. With no one coming home, I managed to take a bath earlier than usual. Without Kent and my sister-in-law around. The bath was cleaner than when I usually take my turn as the fifth person, and I soaked in leisurely. Suddenly, the bathroom door banged open, and, startled, I looked back to see my sister-in-law standing there. I instantly understood that her date must have ended in disaster. "Hurry up and get out, you slowpoke," she said, dragging me out of the tub, and unbelievably, she pushed me out of the washroom naked, throwing my clothes at my face. My father-in-law was also in the house. I realized the danger, but it was already too late. Hearing the commotion, my father-in-law had somehow ended up standing behind me. After looking me over, he said, "I thought I was about to see a good scene, but our useless daughter-in-law is just a skinny old hag, nothing exciting about that." No wonder Kent doesn't want to stay home. Mixed with embarrassment, frustration, and a whirlwind of other emotions, I rushed into my room. Looking at my reflection in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself for a moment. Due to the busyness and stress, I hadn't been eating well recently. I was aware of that, but the person reflected back at me was skeletal thin, with dry hair and a lifeless expression. Staring at myself in the mirror, filled with frustration and anguish, I cried silently for the first time since arriving at my in-laws. I must have cried for about an hour before Kent returned home. "Wow, thought you were a ghost." "A weepy old hag ghost, that's new," he said, laughing at what I told him about earlier. "Seriously? That's hilarious. Even Dad made fun of you," he said, laughing it off. It was a moment something snapped inside me. Why was I putting up with these people? What were these past few years all about? Watching my husband continue to laugh, I swore to myself that I would get my revenge. And then, as if by fate, I received a call from Amy. Having not gone out much recently, I decided to wear a dress since I was too thin for my pants to fit anymore. It was a dress Kent had given me as a gift. The moment Amy saw me, she burst into tears and hugged me. "I should have visited even if you would have hated it," she said, expressing regret and words of comfort. Amy had reserved a private room for us, stating she had something important to discuss. The information she shared was astonishing, but for me, who had recently vowed revenge, it felt like I had just been handed a weapon. I shared everything with Amy, what had been happening, the recent incidents, and what I planned to do next. Amy listened, crying, and at the end, she said, "I'll help you in any way I can, and there are plenty of others who will stand by you. We'll get your happiness back," showing the mischievous grin she's had since we were kids. I couldn't help but laugh, realizing it had been so long since I'd genuinely smiled. The joy of being able to laugh made me cry again. Returning home, I went about my usual chores. My mother-in-law criticized me as always, but it didn't affect me anymore. I told Kent I needed to talk to him. He seemed incredibly annoyed, but I confronted him with photos. He was visibly shaken but started talking, perhaps thinking he could talk his way out of it. "I met her while out drinking with friends, and we just had a bit of fun. Plus, with a wife who's a high school dropout, Clumsy, older, and can't even manage household chores properly, let alone smile. It's been tough being at home. As if it was all my fault, he had the nerve to speak so smoothly. So, it's my fault, then? Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So, I had no choice. Relieved by my words, he responded. Right. Then let's get a divorce. I'll have to explain everything to the inn's owner, who was like a parent to me, and apologize. They even acted as our go-between. Make sure you pay the alimony properly. I'll also divide the assets and claim alimony from your partner, I said, looking at him as if he were seeing a different creature, to which he retorted, acting all high and mighty just because I was submissive, and he hit me. Raising his hand must have made Kent realize he had gone too far. I recorded that, you know. Look, I'm at my limit. If you don't want a divorce, let's at least end this cohabitation. I'll leave the day after tomorrow, on Saturday. The tea shop's business was mostly related to the inn, thanks to the owner who was concerned about me and had increased transactions. So, Kent had no escape. I had said I would leave in advance to prevent any interference with ending the cohabitation, and had packed my belongings. On the day, I had Kent inform his family that I was leaving then. They all sat at the breakfast table as usual, expecting breakfast to be ready. Seeing all three of them asking in unison, "Where's breakfast?" made me burst into laughter. I want to end this cohabitation. We only had breakfast because Sally made it. We should have been more grateful. As they all started hurling insults, Kent slammed the table and shouted, "Anyway, I want to separate. If we don't, things will get worse. Everyone, take care of your own needs. Sally, let's go," pulling me by the hand. For a moment, I wished he had taken such decisive action sooner. Shaking off his hand, I said, "We probably won't see each other again. The useless woman is leaving. Goodbye," and stepped ahead of Kent to leave. We stayed at a hotel for a while. A few days later, Kent didn't return to the hotel where we were staying. After waiting a day, I checked the company's bank account and found that all the money had been withdrawn, indicating Kent had fled. Seeing the balance at zero, I couldn't hide my shaking hands and the turmoil inside me. Months had passed since then, and I had returned to work at the inn. The money I had saved for my dream was still untouched. With that money, I bought a small house. It was a prefabricated house that caught my eye the day I reunited with Amy. It reminded me of the house I lived in with my family when I was young. Wanting to start anew, the day after Kent disappeared, I called the management company, and a few weeks later, I successfully purchased the house. On a day off, while I was in the garden, I heard a familiar voice. "Sally. There you are, glad to see you're doing well," said the voice as my former in-laws, all three of them, entered the property. "Why are you here?" They seemed taken aback by my coldness, but their presumptuous attitude remained unchanged. "Not a bad house you've got here. We came because we heard you built a house. The shop was closed when we went there." "Where's Kent?" they said, barging through the front door without waiting for an invitation. "Please, stop. Don't come in," I protested. "No, ever heard of cutting your coat according to your cloth? It's a waste for just two people to live here. From today, we'll be living here. If you don't want to live with us, then you should leave. Oh, but you'll be the one paying. After all, you were poor to begin with, so you can live anywhere, right? We're having a hard time right now. Families should help each other, right?" my former mother-in-law said, patting my shoulder, to which I gave a look of disdain. Ah, these people don't understand what they're doing. They kept trying to enter despite my refusal and attempts to stop them. But there isn't a chance in the world I'd let things go their way. "Yes, ex-family. I would have loved to help," I said, just as a melody from hell reached our ears from afar. The sound of police cars. "I've called the police. How dare you enter someone's home like this? It would be terrible if Sally got hurt. Come here. Who are these people?" Amy was shouting from the luxurious staircase. Yes, this is Amy's house. While it's true I bought a new house nearby, today I was just visiting Amy's house. And as the sirens blared, my former in-laws seemed unable to grasp the situation. Ex-family? What's that? I'm divorced from Kent, didn't you know? And about that tea shop you were so proud of, it went under because Kent ran off with all the money. Were you unaware of all this? Such a shame you've come all this way. Perhaps, with all these complications, even a college graduate can't keep up? I said with a laugh, watching the former in-laws turn pale. Ignoring their shock, Amy continued her act, a performance filled with conviction.
What? The family of Sally's ex-husband? You followed her all the way here? That's scary,
she exclaimed just as the police burst in.
Officers! These people seem to be stalking this girl, and they entered our house without permission.
Amy made a scene, shouting with all the windows open. Her voice, along with the sirens, attracted the neighbors. Though they lived in the next town over, being from a family that had done business here for generations. They had many acquaintances around. Isn't that the son of the Morrison tea shop? An elderly person remarked, causing everyone to look at the former father-in-law. Confused, the former in-laws were shoved into a police car and taken away. The police may contact you again for further information, an officer told me, and as I watched the police car carrying the former in-laws drive away, I finally felt a sense of relief wash over me. That night, Amy and I celebrated until the morning. We raised a toast. It all went almost according to plan. I had anticipated that the former in-laws might show up someday. That day I reunited with Amy, we had devised a plan. First off, I wanted to leave my in-laws' house quietly and get Kent to sign the divorce papers. I didn't want any messy disputes that would bind me any further. So, I told Kent that if he didn't agree to separate from his family, we would get a divorce. I made him write the divorce papers, stating that if we weren't living separately by the specified date, I would file them. On the day we decided to separate, I showed Kent a fake set of papers and tore them up. I also intentionally left a reasonable amount in one of the company's bank books in an obvious place, having transferred the rest to my account. I said I didn't need the money, but Amy insisted I should take it. And in a way, his scumbaggery helped the plan. It turns out the woman Kent had deceived, pretending to be single, was a friend of Amy's. Amy's friend thought she was dating a single man, and they had talked about marriage. I didn't claim alimony for his infidelity, but Amy encouraged her deceived friend to demand it. Kent fled when faced with the claim amount. Moreover, that friend turned out to be the daughter of the president of the company where my former sister-in-law worked. Even in a relatively large town, it seems everyone is connected somehow, a typical small-town scenario, I guess. My former sister-in-law, of course, didn't know she was involved with Kent's affair, but suspicions led to an investigation into her conduct. It was discovered she had been coercively inviting younger male employees to dinner and had been engaging in power harassment, leading to her being prompted to resign voluntarily. The father-in-law had been receiving a part of the tea shop's profits as a nominal manager, relying on transfers from the company's account that Kent had run off with. When the transfers from Kent stopped, it led to their current predicament. Afterward, due to the misunderstanding leading to their home invasion, being first-time offenders, and the fact that no one was injured, the three spent about 2 days in detention before being released. However, maintaining the large house they lived in with 5 adults became impossible, and now they apparently reside in a small, run-down apartment, constantly bickering among themselves. Despite all being highly educated, the 65-year-old former father-in-law, the 60-year-old former mother-in-law who had barely worked, and the former sister-in-law who was essentially fired for power harassment, had no significant job prospects. Their overbearing attitudes in the past meant there was no one willing to help them. As for Kent, the fury of the owner, whose daughter he deceived, was tremendous. He was found, put on a fishing boat, and apparently is working off the compensation. Now, I'm living carefree in this small house. There's no more suffocation. I'm not planning on marrying again anytime soon. I hope to enjoy my time here in this house at a leisurely pace with my best friend Amy, who still comes to visit and worry about me. The miserable, frustrating, and hateful times are over. I felt a refreshing breeze brush against my cheek.
I'm here for a visit.
I naturally turned towards the voice and smiled.
My dream was to create a place where a family could smile together. Now, I'm determined to face forward and live without forgetting to smile once again.